Did you know that just a few years after winning its independence, the United States nearly fell apart over whiskey? That's right. Before Prohibition, before moonshiners, America faced its very first rebellion of federal powers. And it's all about liquor taxes. So let's get into the story of the Whiskey Rebellion of the 1790s. And it's all about farmers, whiskey, and George Washington. After the Revolution, the United States was in very deep debt. Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of the Treasury, had a plan: raise money and excise a tax on distilled spirits. That meant whiskey. Now, whiskey wasn't just drink, it was a way of life. In western Pennsylvania and other frontier areas, farmers often turned extra grain into whiskey because it was easier to store, transport, and even use for trade. In many cases, whiskey was their currency. So when the federal government slapped a tax on it in 1791, the farmers saw it as a direct attack on their livelihood. At first, protests looked very similar to what they had done earlier when they protested against the British. Petitions, angry speeches, refusal to pay, but things quickly escalated. The collectors were harassed, tarred and feathered, and ran out of town. By 1794, mobs of armed farmers in Pennsylvania were resisting openly, attacking officials, and threatening anyone who cooperated with the government. To Americans, this wasn't about whiskey anymore. It was a test of the newly formed government to see if it actually had authority over its citizens. President George Washington wasn't about to let this rebellion slide. Remember, this was the same man that led the fight against the British rule. But now, as president, he needed to prove that the Constitution gave the government real power. In 1794, Washington personally called up militia forces of nearly 13,000 men from several states. To put that into perspective, that was larger than any army he commanded during the Revolution. And here's the dramatic part. Washington actually mounted his horse and rode ahead of the troops. The only time in U.S. history a sitting president has done so. When the militia marched into western Pennsylvania, the rebels melted away. There was no major battle. The sheer show of force was enough to crush the uprising. The Whiskey Rebellion might seem small compared to later events, but it was still significant. First, it showed the federal government under the new Constitution had the strength and will to enforce its laws. Second, it set a precedent. Protests were acceptable, but armed resistance would not be tolerated. And third, it deepened the growing political divide. Thomas Jefferson and his supporters argued that Washington and Hamilton used unnecessary force against ordinary citizens. Federalists, on the other hand, believed that strong action was essential to keep order. In the end, the Whiskey Rebellion fizzled out, but it left a lasting mark on the young republic. The message is clear. If you wanted change in America, you had to do it through politics, not violence. So, next time you raise a glass of whiskey, remember, it once nearly tore the United States apart. So, trying something new, a little bit of history, in some upcoming videos that I've got planned. I'm going to do some more deeper dives into certain history in whiskey and even a little bit of fun stuff. With October coming up pretty soon, I'm going to do some kind of paranormal, spooky stories about whiskey and whiskey distilleries. So I hope that's going to be of interest to you. I'm still going to continue the series of the roll of the dice tastings. I have some other things planned as well. Yes, the RC stuff is staying, so that's in some upcoming videos. So stay tuned. Click that like button. Please share. I'd like everybody to be able to see these videos. And subscribe so you don't miss any further videos. So, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And to each and every one of you, long ashes and full glasses. And we'll see you in the next video.